I'm Christiana Szilard with Action for Children, and I want to tell you about our new series called Pull Up a Chair. We're hosting real conversations between our resident experts at Action for Children and parents just like you to foster informative dialogue on topics that matter to parents, guardians, and caregivers. Our hope is to provide you with valuable insights, practical tips, and emotional support to allow you to embrace and better navigate this grand adventure called parenthood. So now that you're here, pull up a chair. We've saved you a seat.
Hi, Tory.
Hey.
I'm Arla Lyles, coordinator, facilitator, and coach of Mothers Matter at Action for Children.
I'm Tory High. I am a facilitator with the FatherUp movement that is housed under Action for Children. So to me, co-parenting is working on behalf of the child. Now that could be in two separate homes, it could be together in one home. We like to emphasize how either way we come from different backgrounds and we have our ideologies about what parenting is, and so we are working together whether we're inside the home together or not.
Co-parenting in TAP, the Art of Positive Parenting, includes two parents that are parenting together. They may be biological parents, but it also could be extended family, friends, community.
Co-parenting applies to both of the parents that are involved in raising the child or children. Sometimes that could be, different mothers, different fathers, so you could have, a blended family type of situation where, several different members of the family or friends and things like that. But in general, we like to focus on the two biological parents with FatherUp. Of course, we're with the fathers, so they have their own challenges, but usually we're talking about the dynamic between biological dad and biological mother.
In Mothers Matter, we really focus on co-parenting. It's our 7th session, and it's a session that a lot of times moms come to us specifically for because maybe they don't know how to co-parent with dad. And so, we strongly encourage them to listen when dad is talking and to model that listening so that he can also listen to them. We talk about treating it like a business relationship if there are emotions involved, and that will allow you to treat your child's parent like, a business partner and treat them with respect and kind of honor what they're saying, listen, and, really treat them the way you want to be treated, but on behalf of the child, find a way to work with that parent and partner with them so that the children get what they need. When children see their parents working together, I think they feel valued because children are part of mom and part of dad. So when parents are in conflict, if mom is upset with dad or she doesn't want to listen to dad, children can also feel that maybe there's a part of them mom doesn't like or doesn't want to listen to. So I think it's really important that parents respect one another. They are the first teachers for the children. They're modeling how to be adults, how to be parents, how to treat each other. There's so many things kids are learning from that parenting relationship between mom and dad. And so I think it's very important that we as parents model that for our children, because how I treat my kid's father is going to impact the way they treat him, and how he treats me, they're going to take the lead from him. So it's very important that we find a way to communicate effectively and to be respectful and to honor the goodness that each parent is bringing, not focus or shine the light on what's not going so well, but really keep the children, as the priority and, use that as motivation to get along with dad.
Having a stable, nurturing environment is super important. When children feel that they are cared for and that their feelings and that their well-being comes first, they go out into the world with a sense of confidence and self-esteem and all of those things that really help them to thrive. Where, they've been validated from the beginning, they're being told and shown that, these parent issues aren't their fault. They don't have anything to do with them. And so we're still encouraging that nurturing, safe environment, regardless of what the co-parenting situation is. And that's why that communication piece is so important, that the two co-parents, do that well, take those issues and the negatives out of view of the children, and still come together for the benefit of the children first. Do those things separately, and now we're kind of talking about two different things. We're talking about the children and how we interact with them, but then how we also do our co-parenting and how we connect to get on the same page, out of view of the children, but for the goal of benefiting them.
We have a quote in Mothers Matter that says, "Be who you want your children to be." And that's so important because we're always modeling for the children, whether we acknowledge it or not, and whether the children realize it or not. They're watching us, they're listening to us, they're seeing how we respond to conflict, how we engage their father, right? And they're learning from us how to be a woman, how to be a mom, how to show up in spaces. And so it's very important that we kind of examine ourselves regularly to make sure that our children are seeing us in the best light. And even when maybe we're not putting our best foot forward, how do we then follow up that behavior or conversation with them, with dad? I learned with Mothers Matter that it's okay to apologize to your children, right? Especially when you genuinely feel maybe you didn't say or do what you really wanted to. And, I remember apologizing to my youngest son, and just the look in his eye was so shocked that Mom apologized, and he could tell it was genuine. And it's okay, Mommy, so forgiving so quickly. But it's, humbling yourself in the face of your children, maybe when you haven't provided such a good example, is also teaching them that it's okay to make mistakes. Nobody expects them to be perfect. There's something to be learned, through every situation we find ourselves in. But I just know they're taking their cue from us. And it's important that we're being the best version of ourselves for them. And even when we're not able to, making sure we connect with them and let them know that they're our priority, that they're most important, and that we're working with their father and their father's working with us to make sure that they're okay.
That's a beautiful point. I love the forgiveness or the asking for forgiveness or apologizing piece of that. For fathers, for dads, for men, that's not something that we're traditionally, taught to do. We think of fatherhood and parenting as a control thing, keeping the house under control, keeping the finances under control. And so to be able to admit our mistakes, especially to our children who we are, we're not on the same power level with, and that becomes hard sometimes. And we feel like we're giving something up by apologizing, by admitting that we're wrong and that we're losing respect, but really we're empowering our children and we're empowering ourselves. We're demonstrating vulnerability and the ability to make change. We want our children to apologize and admit their wrongs. And all of this opens up the door for empathy. And so when we can do that as co-parents, even with each other, again, we're modeling that for our children as well. We're opening the door for better relationships with our co-parents. Even if they're not romantic, we're not looking to rekindle things like that, we can still be positive and productive and not be in competition and conflict with each other.
Yeah, I think ultimately the idea is that the children feel safe when they're with each parent and when the family is all together. And I think, apologizing, using positive parenting strategies is a tool that we can use to make the children feel safe. And then that way they maybe will tell us when they didn't get the grade they wanted on the test, or, they broke something in the house that's valuable. Right. But if the children don't feel safe with the parents, then, that's a problem. And so when the parents can come together and get on the same page and decide this is how we're going to parent our children, I think everybody is better as a result. I think what comes to mind for me is this term gatekeeper. When we think about parents maybe who were romantic once upon a time, now they're not together, there's a baby involved or a child involved. And, there's feelings, there's emotions. Maybe somebody cheated on someone or, was disrespectful in some way, and I'm still hurt by that. And even though you want to see your children and be involved in their lives, what about me?
Right.
And so we use the term gatekeeper to mean that, maybe it's a mom who's standing in the way of dad having a relationship with his children because I'm hurt, because you disrespected me, and it's going to be my way or no way. And so we really discourage gatekeeping behavior. And what we do encourage is that you take the time you need to sort out your feelings, right? And put the child first, right? Your feelings are important. Healing from those wounds is important, and it should be a priority. But the child is here now. The child has a whole other parent that should be involved in their life, has something valuable to bring to the table, will reflect this child back to themselves. This is a very important relationship the child needs to have. You want the child to love you and their father, respect you and their dad, listen to you and that side of the family as well. And so while our feelings are important and should be dealt with, while the children are here, they need to feel comfortable, they need to feel safe, they need to feel like a priority, and ultimately we're modeling that behavior for them. If there are conversations we need to have with dad, maybe therapy or counseling, even though we're not romantically involved anymore, it's important that we get the help that we need so that the child feels like they're getting what they need as well.
That's great. I know a lot of times for our dads, same idea. They may find themselves in parenting situations with someone that they were, it might have been a very short-term situation. And so that time beforehand to talk about how they viewed parenting and specifically fatherhood may have never even been talked about. We have these conversations sometimes and it's like, hey, have you ever considered what her fatherhood situation was? A lot of times they don't even know. They don't know if dad was there. They don't know if she had a good relationship with dad. So her coming into her motherhood, you may not, and I'm speaking to a dad, you may have not even been considered. She may be looking at her own mother as the hero. Now she's grown up and she's filling those shoes. And where do you fit into all of that? So your ideals about what fatherhood is, what co-parenting looks like, these may all be new concepts that neither of you have ever considered before. So to be able to communicate and say, what do we want this to look like in terms of co-parenting, that's really important. In our groups, for our guys to have those moments where they consider that. I mean, I've heard guys say, you know what, I never thought about that. I'm gonna call her tonight and just see, what was that like for you as a kid and things like that. Again, that opens the door, for empathy, possible forgiveness, and just kind of a reset in terms of what we're gonna do going forward. How can we get on the same page because we're not even reading from the same book. We're not playing from the same playbook to start. So realizing that you were kind of set on two opposite paths from the start is really eye-opening, and it can change our minds and hearts about what we're doing together as co-parents.
Yeah, and in the same sense in Mothers Matter, we also say we may be judging dad and maybe our male sons through a lens of our own relationships with males, right? So if we had trouble as little girls with boys or brothers or male cousins, or maybe our dad was there or wasn't there, we're using that lens oftentimes kind of subconsciously as we look at the men in our lives or our romantic partner or our child's father and our own male children with that same lens. And so it does give us a moment to stop and reflect and kind of be intentional about how we want to form these relationships and communicate with these men in our lives.
One of the biggest strategies that we use is just talking about control. Understanding what we have control over and what we don't have control over, only focusing on the things that we can't control. We can't control co-parent, we can't control her behavior, her past, what she may do in the future. But we can control how we react to those things. We can control what we do. We can control our own fatherhood. So those things are important. And also just, doing everything for the sake of the child, to benefit the child, their happiness, their well-being. All of those things become super important. We all want that, right? I think as parents, that's a no-brainer. When we get into our sessions and we start talking about strategies, how do we do that? Taking a step back, controlling our breathing, noticing when our emotions are higher, and just, being strategic about the way that we go about it. I think these concepts aren't super difficult to absorb. I mean, it's not a big checklist, do this and then do that. It's really more about an attitude, about understanding your role in this whole situation and realizing that there's only so much you can control and just focusing on the things you can control.
Yeah. In Mothers Matter, one of my favorite points to share is that find something Dad is doing that you can compliment, right? And if it takes you a while, keep trying to find something that's going well in the co-parenting relationship and really highlight that. Because parenting is hard, especially when we're doing it separately, and we each need that boost. We came together once upon a time, we made a child, we were on the same team once upon a time, and now, we can be on the same team again for the benefit of the child. We talk about the listening cues, right? When you're listening to Dad, maybe give the feeling a name when you hear what he's talking about. Maybe just respond with one word instead of, taking the stage and taking over the conversation, but actively listening. Maybe restate or repeat what we've heard, or just use empathic silence where we raise our eyebrows, lean in so that he feels heard, and being able to model that gives us a better chance of getting that in return. I think a huge thing is being mindful not to emasculate Dad and our sons as well. Sometimes we do that with our volume, our tone of voice, our attitude. And again, a lot of times when we interact with that, it could be triggering our emotion. And so it comes up, but just being mindful of that. And as you mentioned, being in control of that will make for a better co-parenting relationship.
Absolutely. And taking the competitive nature out of it, just realizing we have the same goal here. We're trying to raise children, the best that we can. And just like, dad to dad, we're not competing, but mom to dad in a co-parenting relationship, we shouldn't be competing either. For a lot of our dads, we're trying to get custody. We could be in the middle of those types of battles. So there is a competitive nature there because we're fighting an uphill battle sometimes. But in terms of how we're parenting our children and what's important, how we prioritize that and set that on the back burner while we're parenting, and are we reaching for the same goals for our children together, that's easier said than done. But in our groups, it's really beneficial to stop and talk about, doing that on purpose, being intentional about that being the goal.
Yeah, and in Mothers Matter, we talk about getting away from who's right and who's wrong. It's really not about that because, of course, I'm going to think I'm right and you're going to think you're right. But as you mentioned, it's not a competition, right? And so mom has her way of doing things and dad has his way of doing things. My kids might go to bed at 8:30 at my house and 9:30 at their father's house, but he gets to be dad in his house, and I don't have any authority at his house. So it's better for me to come together with him and attempt to get on the same page so that if I think they should go to bed earlier, we can do that through respectful communication as opposed to, me trying to bully him or force him into doing things my way. I think the children seeing us get along, again, models how to show up in relationships and what behaviors we want to see from them. And so, it's very telling, right? The type of relationships that we have with our children, because that's going to dictate their future relationships.
Absolutely. I know for dads, we know the science on that. When dads are present, all of the positives go up, young ladies are less likely to, become teen mothers themselves. Our sons are less likely to go to jail. All of those things, apply. So for us, healthy co-parenting is really important to demonstrate that and to do what we have to do to be present in their lives. Again, a lot of our dads are facing custody issues. They're working to not get cut out of their children's lives from, sometimes. And so for us to be able to do this in a positive way that's going to be, constructive and healthy, just so they can be present, let's start there. And then we can be, even more productive and do all of the modeling and all of that sort of stuff. So when we do that correctly, then all of the rest of that can fall in line. So that becomes super important for our dads. And when we see them get on that same page with that, realizing that we're modeling and it's not just what we say, it's what we do, those day in and day out moments. I asked our guys the other day, what are some things that you remember about your father? Like these key moments that you had. And then we talked after they named them, do you think that if you talked to your dad, he would remember that? Most of them said no, right? So these were these moments that meant something to them. So we never know when we're creating these memories and making the impact. We say, all right, we're busy this week, and on this weekend we'll have some quality time. And we think that during that moment on the weekend is when we're gonna have these impactful moments that last as memories. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those moments when we're on our phones too busy and we just kind of give the quick answer and blow them off and things like that, those are the things that potentially will stand out in their mind. So it all matters. It all matters, every moment, potential impact. And so doing that together, being intentional about that, having those conversations as co-parents, what I do in my home versus what you do, I can't control what you do, but there are some things that we can try to get on the same page about when we're thinking about screen time and things like that. How is this going to impact our children and benefit them? It all matters. So the more we can get on the same page with co-parents, the better it's going to be for them in the long run.
Yeah, and I think each child wants to have their mom and dad at home with them, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case for every family. So if mom lives in another location or dad lives in another location, the child is going back and forth potentially. They want to see their parents get along. They want a family unit that's intact, even if it's not under one roof. So I think that, if parents are parenting separately, it's important that they get along and that they work together so that the child feels like they have a firm foundation that is their family and that they're being taken care of by both of their parents.
For our dads, we are very, very proud at FatherUp to be able to meet them where they are. I'm a facilitator, so we have our group sessions, and we love that stuff. But a lot of times that's in a vacuum. So we're strategizing, we're learning things from each other, we're building rapport as a group. We have this brotherhood of fatherhood. But when they step outside of group, there are actual challenges that they're facing. So we're very, very proud to have our case managers as a part of FatherUp. So each of our dads can connect with them. They can guide them in that direction, in those directions to the proper resources, whether that's, mediation or, even clothing. But to be able to tackle these challenges and help these fathers remove barriers, that's where it all really comes together. And the guys finish the sessions, they say, hey, how many sessions, is this gonna be? And we go 12. We're doing 12 sessions for 2 hours each. And they're like, man, it's kind of a lot. Same guys at the end of it, they're like, oh, this is our last 2 sessions, like we're done already? So once they're bought into what we're doing and they connect with that, we do have some really, really good feel-good moments. And the guys, just the way that they use each other as resources. I mean, we've had guys one guy's an employer, one guy becomes the employee, and being able to do that remotely, even through Zoom. We had a couple of guys that were on the move. They were on the phone on their Zoom call, safely, of course. They're in the car, they have it propped up. And both of these guys, they had never met, they were just on Zoom. They ended up at the same barbershop at the same time. And they were like, wait, are you you know, and then one was getting his hair cut and the other one was holding his phone for him, and they were just kind of on there talking together, and they met that day. Like, what are the odds, you know, in a city this big? But, you know, just the way that they connect and communicate and being able to tap into resources is huge for us.
Yeah, I feel similarly about Mothers Matter. It does become a community quite rapidly. You know, we offer 8 sessions, 2 hours each. We're in person on Tuesdays, but we do have some moms that Zoom in when transportation or childcare is a barrier. And then we're on Zoom on Thursdays, but we help with those barriers, right? We can get moms connected to some transportation assistance. It might be a bus pass. We offer childcare resources here at Action for Children, so I immediately get them connected to that team so that they can get their needs met in that way. Mothers Matter also comes with coaching, one-on-one coaching. So, you know, during the cohort, after the cohort doesn't expire, if moms need some support, I feel like I'm a lifeline.
I like to think of Action for Children as kind of a one-stop shop for parents on behalf of their children. We can meet their needs in a variety of ways and meet them where they are at, which is most important. We're not judging, and these things take practice, you know, even with our sessions and all that stuff. I learn something all the time, and these concepts are reinforced to me all the time that I take into my fatherhood. So for Action for Children as a whole, we can meet those needs on the behalf of children for the parents in so many different kinds of ways.
Healthy co-parenting to me just looks like each parent respecting the other parent as their child's parent, right? And treating each other the way they want to be treated. Keeping the child as the priority and agreeing that they will deal with whatever conflicts arise as adults away from the children so that the children feel safe and taken care of.
Healthy co-parenting to me means prioritizing the children. That's the most important thing. It can often mean denying ourselves, you know, maybe even giving a little bit to get a lot. And what we're getting is healthy children, stable children, you know, children whose well-being is cared for. So it's really not about us. So sometimes it is about denying ourselves, but that's what healthy co-parenting can be. And if we're both doing that, the children benefit. That's what it's really all about. So Arla, having had this conversation, in one word, how does this conversation make you feel? What are you coming away with in one word?
Validated. Tory, in one word, how does this conversation make you feel?
Galvanized.
That's good. That's better than mine. Tory, thank you so much for being here and having this co-parenting conversation with me.
And thank you. Thank you for being here. It's always great to talk with you, and I love these topics. I think that, you know, we're doing a lot of really good work.